What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another breakdown for American Horror Story Freak Show. The onesie party continues over here, but Ryan, looks like you had to stop this week.
I'm sorry, Greg. I know I had it was way too sweaty last week for me, so I had to just put that onesie in the wash. And I also have a puppy over here, so this puppy is not giving me any time to sleep. So I just threw on a hoodie, and I'm here to break down this episode with you.
How you doing, baby?
But onesie or no onesie, I am still capable of breaking down this episode with you. It is episode 9. It is called Tupperware Party Massacre, and it's a whole lot of fun. Let's get into it.
Woo! So this episode's titled, of course, Tupperware Party Massacre, which may be a little nod to Slumber Party Massacre, one of my favorite horror films. And we saw a little bit of that in 1984, which is kind of cool that they come back around to this just a little bit. There's actually themes in this episode that we've seen in 1984 as well. It makes me wonder if Ryan Murphy may do something else down the line when it comes to stuff like this, especially the Avon Lady, we'll talk about in a second. But when it comes to the title itself, Tupperware Party Massacre, this wasn't the first title, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. Originally, this was going to be called The Fat Lady Sings, and that's when Kathy Bates' character Ethel was going to perform during this episode, but obviously she is now dead. But they switched it over to Tupperware Party Massacre, which, makes sense for what we see happen in this episode. But yeah, like you said, a fun little reference to Slumber Party Massacre, which is a classic horror film. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch that, and it'll give you some more context into what we see in this show, as well as just horror movies and TV in general. Now, a fun little fact here also, well, not so fun for Kathy Bates' characters, but around the 8th, 9th episode, both in Coven and in Freak Show, she loses her head. Obviously, of course, you remember back in Coven, she gets her head cut off, but then the head still can talk and all that stuff happens, that ridiculousness. But also, at end of last episode, beginning of this episode, we see, how she lost her head, and it was all basically, not a suicide like they said it was, but, not the best luck for Kathy Bates' characters in both Freak Show and Coven.
Let's see what happens in season 10 in episode 9 or 8. I'm curious to see if she keeps her head on this time.
Well, watch out, Kathy, watch out.
Okay, so this episode kicks off with Maggie giving Dandy a psychic reading for $5, I guess. She says she recognizes the voice, but she can't put it together. Okay, she's just, come on. One of the most traumatic experiences she's had in the past maybe 3 weeks. And yeah, it's Dandy. Come on, he's the clown.
You would think that she would put 2 and 2 together and realize that was the voice of the person that basically kidnapped them in the woods, right? Because we already know at this point, Jimmy has an inkling of who it was, that Dandy was behind the mask. As we find out later in this episode, he approaches him about it. But Maggie is not so sharp. I'm kind of concerned about Maggie here.
And this cuts straight into a flashback, which could have been maybe a few hours ago or a day ago, where Dandy kills the Avon Lady. He invites her over, immediately kills her, and then what does he do? He cuts off her head and puts it onto his mother's dead body to create a marionette puppet, which was foreshadowed earlier in episodes with the King and I thing he did earlier.
Yeah, this was some great classic horror right here. I mean, seeing his mother up there with another head attached to him, making his own version of Bette and Dot that he can control his mother, that now he can take some control over, like you said, do a little puppet show with them. It was just very, very terrifying to look at, but visually it looked really realistic as well.
It's gnarly.
Avon calling. Is the lady of the house available?
One last thing about the Avon Lady. We can't sleep on this because after we just broke down 1984, what do we have? It was Mary Kay, right?
We're trying to listen to Credence!
This seems to be a thing that Ryan Murphy keeps tapping into now, and I'm actually curious. I wonder if we're ever going to get something in the future when it comes to Avon Ladies or Mary Kay or the whole thing of a Tupperware parties. The thing with Avon is this goes right into the idea of Dandy being this guy you would never think would kill anybody. He's the Jeffrey Dahmer. He's the BTK killer who worked for ADT. It's the same thing. Avon ladies at the time, again, to have this job, you have to have this form of trust to think to even go out there, to go into people's houses at this time. My wife very vividly remembers her Avon Lady and her family. This is a huge thing. And even going with the time period we are in now, I know that Avon is, because of the makeup industry, it's just a little different nowadays because of YouTube. It's a little different. So I don't know if Avon, I'm sure they're still up top. Someone can in the comment section can let us know if Avon's a huge thing. I know they've branched out into everything at this point. Again, Dandy gets away with everything because of who he is, what he looks like, and his power and money. So we're looking at all the freaks who are the scary, oh no, we got to get away from these people, they may kill us, when in actuality, it could be anybody.
You don't have to hide from me. I'm Peg Boggs. I'm your local Avon representative, and I'm as harmless as cherry pie. Oh my.
And like you say, Greg, about the Mott family and kind of their place in society, the wealth they have, they can basically use that influence to get whatever they want. He has this outward confidence because he knows he's almost nearly untouchable. You know, as we find out later in the episode, the cops won't do anything. He can basically pick and choose what he wants to do every day. And that's, you know, being extremely abusive and murdering. And he's a psychopath, obviously. But, you know, money goes a long way in this society back then in the 1950s, right? I mean, we even see it when he gives Maggie the $100 for her this BS reading. It completely changes, you know, the whole vibe in the room. She's willing to do almost anything for him. She thanks him. Any more readings in the future? By the way, I don't know how she's making a killing on these lame-ass readings that anyone believes that are even close to the truth. But we cannot forget about the influence that a family like the Mott family would have in this era, this time, this society.
Money.
Yeah, and it shows the discrepancy between people who have it and people who don't have it, and kind of the unfair treatment of those who don't have it, and basically how he can get away with anything, including murder, because he has money.
Now, going to Jimmy for a second, he is not well. He's in bad shape ever since Ethel died.
Yeah.
He's in a little bit of a relationship, I would say. I don't know if we'd call it a relationship, where he's feeding Ima. He's taking care of her.
Yeah, it's clear he's not feeling good. I mean, it's understandable too, right? He lost his mother, who was his closest confidant, who raised him. You know, he didn't really know who his father was until more recently. And, you know, now he's just trying to fix himself with alcohol and, you know, all these small little vices that are temporary fixes that really won't really cure him. But, you know, luckily he has like these hallucinations, which we'll get to later, that kind of remind him who he is and where he came from, and kind of the sacrifices that his mother did for him in order to give him the life that he has. So, you know, this is like he goes down a dark hole. It's expected, and he does some nasty things and treats people kind of horribly due to kind of the fallout of what he's seen in the last few episodes, the death of Meep, the death of his mother, and he blames himself for a lot of this.
So Jimmy spots Dandy. He runs up to him. And again, Maggie, what's going on? Because Jimmy, while even drunk, he recognizes that voice. He knows he's the clown from a couple nights prior. Now, he shouldn't have told Dandy this information because that was a terrible, terrible idea, as Dandy tells him quickly that I'm going to get my revenge on you for what you guys did. And he's looking for the twins right now.
Yeah, if you know this information, Greg, you don't let the killer know that you know. You gotta just like hold that information close to you.
He's
yourself,
drunk,
and then exactly, he's drunk, but he can still recognize the voice. Which Maggie, you need some help if you can't recognize the person that almost killed you. But like Jimmy should have basically kept his mouth shut, knowing what he knew about Dandy, and then tried to plot. You know. The thing is that though here, like, he can't go to the cops like Dandy can, as we see later in the episode, right? He doesn't have that resource that Dandy does, because he's an outsider. He's a freak, and the cops have always been pitted against them. So he knows that he can't just do it like the right way. He can't just try to get justice the way that you and I would try to get justice. Like, he has to like basically do some stuff kind of behind the scenes in order to pull off what he wants to pull off. So. He's drunk, and he tells Dandy kind of that he knows what he did.
I'm your god, Jimmy. And I've decided that you need to suffer.
Meanwhile, with Ethel out of the way, Stanley is getting closer to Elsa, and he's convinced her and everyone that he's managed to find Dr. Sugar to perform the surgery on the twins. Okay, come on, everybody.
Greg, why is everyone's so gullible in this show, right? They believe everything that Stanley's saying, or... I mean,
you gotta have it. There has to be a sense of gullibility with some people on this show, or it doesn't continue. The roll credits, if any point, they're like, Stanley, I don't believe you.
Yeah, it's just way too good to be true. The key here is, right, that Elsa and Stanley found the note in Ethel's trailer that basically revealed everything. That kind of was a suicide note, and basically told Jimmy
to the twins,
the location of the twins, and told Jimmy the truth about everything. But they really easily found this note. I was surprised how easily they oh my God, they looked in one place, two places, and they found it. There it is.
Oh, so they find the twins in the West Palm Beach motel, where they tell them, we got to run, we got to hide you guys, because no freaks are safe. As Stanley says, after what happened with Ethel, there's been a rise in violence around the town, apparently. Mm-hmm. And of course, they say, a mob killed Ethel. Sure. And again, they're still trying to convince them that Dr. Sugar can perform the surgery, and he can perform it well, apparently, to save them both. I'm trying to imagine I just keep thinking that is Dot's head going to be put into a robot or something like on Futurama? How is this going to work?
Nixon's back!
Now, back at the Freak Show, we get to see some of Desiree's past come back into the present. Angus T. Jefferson introduces himself when Maggie and Desiree are walking around the Freak Show property. Apparently, she's been seeing this guy on the side for quite a bit of time, or they've had some type of relationship in the past.
Her beau.
Angus, of course, is played by Malcolm Jamal Warner. You guys might recognize from The Resident currently right now, obviously The Cosby Show back in the day. He also was in another Ryan Murphy-produced show called American Crime Story, which was awesome, the one on O.J. Simpson. He plays A.C. Cowlings, O.J.'s best friend. So clearly, Desiree and Del have been having some problems with the marriage. There's been some extramarital affairs going on between both of them. Obviously, we know all about Del's side of the story as well. This is basically some foreshadowing for what we might see later in the future and how things end up for this relationship.
Now, Desiree and Maggie head straight into one of the tents where they spot Jimmy and Ima doing the business for a second. I would have just hey, y'all do you, and walked out. But Maggie had a few words to say. She was upset. She was hurt. And she let them know. So she goes straight for Jimmy and Ima. Side note, outside of the Ima Wiggles character on AHS, Chrissy Metz is an incredible actor. So give her, if you haven't seen her work before, she is amazing. So this is a cool start for a lot of actors in taking on roles like this. With Ima Wiggles, you have the Lizard Lady, of course. And these are actors that have gone on to have great, great careers. And their careers haven't even peaked yet. Not at all.
And finally, that brings us to the Tupperware party. The housewives in Jupiter, Florida. The reason why this episode is titled Tupperware Party Massacre. As soon as you see this, Greg, you know that bad stuff is going to happen to these women that are hanging out with the Tupperware.
And Jimmy, I don't even know how he got over there. He is drunk, but he starts having hallucinations of his mom, which then leads to him finally getting kicked out. And then, of course, Dandy begins his plan right from there as he knocks on the door and charms his way in.
My, that dress is a magical color. What is that, periwinkle?
Lana Lobo calls it Spanish sky.
It's remarkable.
I really enjoyed these scenes to get more of Kathy Bates. Obviously, we know that she's no longer with us on the show, but to see her kind of instilling this lesson of life into her son, teaching him, what she stood for, what he needs to, this version of him is not good. He needs to be better. Yeah. That she didn't make all the sacrifices, like I said earlier, for him to just be a drunk like his father, like the people before him. Like he could be so much more, and it was really effective. Just to basically have him hallucinating and kind of coming to grips with the reality of the situation.
Yeah, and Kathy Bates is getting paid. She's like, oh, you're going to kill me off? Don't worry. Bring me back as a ghost or something. I don't care. I'm going to make every single episode. I don't care.
Now, one thing to note, it seems as if Dandy had been basically tailing Jimmy for quite some time, right? Like, how else did he know that he's at the Tupperware party, right? He basically probably was waiting outside or following him and basically waiting for him to slip up. And, obviously Jimmy's been like extremely wasted, drunk this whole time. So it was pretty easy to basically wait for a moment that he could kind of take advantage of and then just frame Jimmy for this crazy massacre. Now, a fun little fact here, there's an actress that plays one of the housewives in this scene. She also was in A Nightmare on Elm Street. She played Nancy Thompson. The actress's name is Heather Langenkamp, and it's a fun little cameo from a classic horror film into American Horror Story.
Hey, Nancy! No running in the hallway.
Now, if the bathtub's full of blood wasn't enough for you, or the two-headed dead mother wasn't enough for you, well, now you get a whole swimming pool full of blood and floating dead bodies. American Horror Story, in this episode, they went for it.
Now, back to Bette and Dot for a second, and this cool, quick scene. It's quick, but it's cool when you think about it. It's just Sarah Paulson by herself acting the hell out of a scene right now, where it's Bette and Dot going over what's going to happen with this surgery. And again, Bette tells her sister that she's willing to go through with it, even though she may die, because she loves her.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, man. This is like the degree of difficulty for one actor to play two different people in the same scene and bring that emotion and that intensity to each aspect of that conversation in a very, very, very touching, very emotional scene. It just Sarah Paulson is like one of the greatest, right?
She's putting on a show this year. I absolutely adore this character, or should I say, these characters.
And we're not bad people. We're good people, good girls, and we've seen so much suffering, and we deserve a chance.
Back at Mott Manor, Dandy's preparing for another bloodbath, and a nice little touch. He's using the Tupperware. He obviously took from the Tupperware party to, take the blood and put it in his bathtub. The man is insane.
Yeah. Greg, if you had any question about the type of person he was, grabbing the Tupperwares and filling them with blood and bringing them home with you, I mean, that's some next level stuff right there.
So Regina walks in, immediately tells him that, hey, I called the cops. They're on their way looking for my missing mom. And he just straight up tells her, listen, I don't care. I killed your mom and there's nothing you can do about it. And at that point, she's just like, oh, shit, I got to get out of here. And he lets her go because he knows, like, there's nothing you can do. I am a god, apparently, and I am the law in like this Judge Dredd kind of weird moment.
I'm above the law, beyond the law. I am the law.
I was still surprised, though, to see that Dandy would let her leave after all this. I mean, he even says that he killed his own mother, he killed her mother, and he, like you said, he's way overly confident that he's like above the law, that he could do whatever he wants. But to leave that sliver of like an opportunity for someone to take him down. He's reached this point where he's a little too confident into cocky.
I think that's also because the writers wanted to have a payoff later on, just to show you how powerful he really is. Yes, he could have killed her right then and there, but I think they really wanted to play on the fact that, oh, maybe you can't stop Dandy no matter what. So they had to amp that up to 11 later in the episode. We then move on to Del, who's in just as bad shape as Jimmy, I think he's writing a suicide note, and it immediately cuts to a flashback to moments prior where he was talking to Stanley, who accosted him and tried to do a few things to him. He intimidated him, and then attempted to try to persuade him by pulling out his junk immediately thereafter. Stanley is a horrible, horrible, horrible person, if you didn't know that already.
Yeah, and Del is extremely conflicted internally, obviously ridden with guilt for what he's done, leading to Ma Petite's death, obviously crushing her like a horrible person he is. And obviously his sexuality that's been hidden and repressed for so long, and he can't really be himself, and he's not comfortable in his own skin. And now he's getting taunted by Stanley, all the time. He's reached a point where, he probably feels horrible about what he's done to his son, about not being there for his entire life, right? And just, not having, Ethel was a good presence, despite them not getting along. Ethel was a great presence in his orbit that could help kind of steer the ship of being a parent, right? A really good parental figure that Del doesn't know how to be at all. So he is completely conflicted, and he thinks the only way out is an easy way out is committing suicide.
And speaking of Ethel, the vision of Ethel Ghost, or whatever we want to call her, hallucination, has returned again. But this time she tells Del to go through with it, and she tells him to hang himself, which he immediately tries and is cut down by Desiree.
All right, Greg, now back at Mott Manor, as you and I had foreshadowed prior, Regina comes back to the house to address Dandy with the authorities, with Detective Colquitt. Now, unfortunately for Regina, we know, you and I, that the police in American Horror Story aren't the best at their jobs. This one, unfortunately for Regina, is completely dirty. So Dandy offers him $1 million, and he shoots her dead.
Doesn't even think about it. Doesn't even take a second. He just straight up, boom, over. For Dandy, again, his power has no bounds. He can do, or at least he feels like he can do whatever he wants. And this really cements that for him.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, he literally is above the law. He just bought off the law, and now he can do whatever he wants. Now, a fun little fact here is that Detective Colquitt is likely related to Jack Colquitt. You remember from earlier seasons of American Horror Story, the LA Police Department Missing Persons Division. We saw him in Murder House, as seen in the episodes, the pilot, Murder House and Spooky Little Girl. So a fun little connection there. Colquitt, the last name, will ring a bell for AHS fans.
So the next scene kicks off with Jimmy, and he's surprised by the twins. Bette and Dot show up to let him know that, well, at least for Dot, is in love with him. And it's a cute scene, but Jimmy tells them that his heart is for someone else. I'm assuming it's Maggie, not Ima. And this leaves the twins a little crushed, it seems.
Yeah, it's a little heartbreaking scene. Obviously, I do agree. It seems like it to be Maggie, right? It seems finally that Jimmy is clear-headed now. He's not in the same state he was before in terms of being ridiculously drunk at all, previously in the episode. He's come to grips with kind of, his life and what he needs to be, and the version of himself that he needs to put forward. But yeah, I was conflicted about the scene because, you have Dot, who's like really, really into this and confesses her love for him. I mean, they show up like topless for him. It's a little bit much, a little bit, aggressive on their part. A big reveal that I think that we saw coming early on in the episode. If you go back and remember their reaction to Jimmy when they first met Jimmy, and even Jimmy's kind of his interaction with them and how he was, it was very flirtatious. So who knows down the road if they might end up together.
They do. Not long after, the police show up, and Dandy is, I guess, completing his frame job for Jimmy. I guess he gave the police another $1 million to go get Jimmy next, which they have now set him up as the Tupperware Party Massacre killer.
That's right, Greg. And now it's looking very, very bad for the freaks. And you have to think that like they're gonna rally around each other, right? Because they don't have the resources that Dandy has. They don't have they can't go to the cops. The truth. They know the truth. They know that Jimmy didn't do this. He would never be capable of doing this. But even the truth won't help them. Won't set him free at all. So they basically have to rally around each other and use the resources that they have. And basically, they're going to be forced to like take justice, put it in their own hands, and take it out on Dandy and get back at him. So, the last few episodes of the season that we have left, we're going to basically see the freaks come together and unify, and get back and fight those who have taken so much from them.
All right, that's it for us over here, everybody. We'll be back here next week for episode 10, Orphans, I believe.
Yes, yeah, that to me looks like a fun one, Greg. This one has a ton of asylum references in it, backstory on Pepper, so I'm excited to get back into that. Guys, if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, or just tell us what onesie you're wearing, put it in the comments down below, and we will see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.